Hello, everyone. In today's session, we'll talk about mastering Google iOS campaigns and also hacks and common mistakes to avoid. My name is Vyacheslav. I'm head of growth at JustPlay. Previously, I worked at Kama Games, Helio Games, Belka Games, and overall, I have been in the industry for more than 7 years. I will let my co-host to present herself.
Hi guys, I'm Elena Ivanova, and I have been working for Just last 5 years, but I still have a huge experience with mobile marketing. At the moment, I'm a gaming lead for Central Europe and Cyprus plus Israel. Among my clients are many different gaming companies, but some names like Say Games, Legendary, or Exlabol. Please, now, Vyacheslav, the stage is yours.
Before we deep dive into iOS, a lot of topics may repeat themselves because many companies face the same issues, but some of them I will confirm, some of them I will disagree on. So iOS is never easy, but it's fun. So a couple of words about my current company. So I work at JustPlay. We are a loyalty program for gamers. We are present on both platforms, and we are 100% ad revenue based. It's an important note to keep in mind for the future slides. So our scope of discussion today will cover iOS scan limitations and possible workarounds. Then we will talk about the baseline checklist for starting Google iOS campaigns and critical steps which might save your time. After that, I will share my observations on the campaign setup and what to expect from new launches. And my favorite one is data measurement. Since there is no single source of truth, we have to keep in mind a number of signals from different data points. And before we close this session, I will also point out to not too obvious, but nonetheless important things to watch out for. A quick disclaimer. The things I'm going to share are based on my own experiences with working Google iOS, and they may not reflect your own. So these results are meant to inspire you and provide ideas for testing for your own projects. Please remember this is not a financial advice. Okay, so first, let us complain about the limitations we have to face today with working with Google iOS, the general iOS market. So attribution is more of a subjective matter right now, and it's open to interpretation, especially for self-attributed networks. Post-install tracking becomes less transparent and less predictable. Data delays affect the decision-making speed and precision. As a result, performance optimization is less effective and accurate. And finally, measuring the results is more about understanding the range rather than exact figures. Having said that, the show must go on, and we as marketers have to adapt and craft workarounds. For example, attribution can be accurate if you rely on scan unified dashboards for all iOS sources. Limited tracking is partially solved by second and third postbacks in Scan 4. Another challenge is to set the values right, but this is something doable. Data delays is something you just have to accept here. There is no other options. It's a new reality. And the use of scan schema values for optimization is still work in progress for most non-probabilistic channels, but it's getting there slowly. And finally, the data measurement approach becomes more creative and holistic than before. Each company creates their own approaches, and they can be vastly different. So keeping in mind, we still cannot ignore Google iOS, since this is a big source of users, and that's why it's important to get the preparations right. It's no secret that Google Ads works better using Firebase conversions. iOS is not an exception. So Firebase is essential, especially because it unlocks T-Rose campaigns. Another quick note is that Google iOS installs are reported slightly different via the MMP reporting API, so it requires an additional step of integration with your MMP partner. You need this point if you want to pull data, install data to your internal BI tools. Also, don't forget to link MMP installs conversions in Google Ads. Otherwise, you will not see any tracked installs in your dashboards. And the last one, make sure to set up Scan for, because recent updates proven that you will not receive any revenue data without Scan for. So after the checklist is done, we can move on to the campaign setup. So my experience from working with Google iOS proved that T-Rose is actually working much better than TCPA in the sense that it gives more stable and long-term rewarding results. So TCPA is more volatile and it's more about short-term quick wins. So when it comes to geo-segmentation, I'd follow the logic to keep US as a standalone and bundle other geos according to your own approach and logic. For instance, by target goal or for localization of creatives. When it comes to budgets, I find it very hard to predict what exact testing budget should be, but it will depend on your actual CPIs and the privacy thresholds you need to surpass. So looking back, I'd say that investing less than 100K in, let's say, 30 days is just not going to be enough for any decent conclusions. But of course, that sum is going to vary based on the nature of your project and the market as well. These numbers are relevant for US. Okay, now when we set the campaign right, what should we expect next? The one and only learning phase. For most of the people who do UA, this is the nightmare. So when you launch Google iOS, most probably the first results will look like this. You will get a lot of Google search and YouTube traffic at first. But in fact, you want the GDN source. That's where the gold is, at least for my projects and from I speak from my experience. The GDN source is something that you want because it's the most relevant video inventory you can get on iOS. So as you can see on the graph, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for the GDN to kick in. And this is the period when you can actually start measuring your data. So again, in my experience, the reliable period for measurement is 4 to 6 weeks after the first launch. Setting the campaign as video only could speed things up, but it doesn't always work from the beginning. So you may convert it to video only after a certain period of time, but it's different every time. If you work with Adjust or any other MMP, you should understand the metrics to consider while building a reliable dashboard. In case of iOS, it means that you need to combine both types of metrics, deterministic and scan attribution. As a result, the final dashboard may look like this. On the left side, you have metrics and installs for opt-in installs. And on the right side, you have everything related to scan. So it is important to understand that total conversions in scan include both installs and reinstalls. So reinstalls could mess up with the project's attribution logic. So when you analyze the data, you need to understand what's the ratio of reinstalls to your installs. And the older your project is, the more the ratio will be. For instance, at JustPlay, we don't re-attribute users, and we keep the original source forever. So we only count performance based on new installs. So for us, it's very important. Then you have total revenue in scan. So this is the revenue unpacked from your scan schema. A supporting metric would be a conversion value null, which is the number of installs for which the scan revenue is not unpacked because of limitations, privacy thresholds, etc. So if this number is very high, so you cannot rely totally on scan metrics. And lastly, if you want to check what happens to user after 24 hours, you can rely on second and third postbacks, which became available in Scan 4. All of the mentioned above allows us to spot data markers and improve the precision of data analysis. The next step is to combine everything together and come up with appropriate measurement approach. In my work, I use quite a straightforward approach for data modeling. An important note is that it probably works for us because of two important factors. One, the opt-in rate is very high. I say here about 30% is like the optimal number, but for us it's much, much higher. So, and number two, our LTV is relatively stable, meaning that we can actually predict longer LTVs very early on. So as a result, the formula which we use for Google iOS analysis is a sum of IDFA and non-IDFA LTVs. We also noticed that the differences in LTV between those two types of installs could be very big. So make sure to do your own research to find the right coefficients. Also worth mentioning that retention rate for Google iOS installs could also be twice higher than on any other iOS source, meaning that this could give you some leverage to manipulate early targets for longer payouts. But as we all know, the devil is in details, so let's talk about additional signals to consider in the analysis. As mentioned before, reinstalls are important. Keep an eye on the installs versus reinstalls ratio. And if you want to focus only on new users, this becomes especially important. CV conversion null. If you choose to rely only on scan data, you need to understand that this is the portion of revenue that's not visible to you. So it's just missing out from the analysis. To overcome this, you should reconsider the volumes and the traffic sources you operate with. For instance, exclude Google, YouTube, and Google Search. Our colleagues from Google may argue with me, but in my experience, Search and YouTube installs are still partially reported in Scan 4. Well, it's not ideal yet. So yeah, there is always going to be discrepancy between Scan and Google. So if you've done everything right, so how can you check that it actually works? There is a quick sanity check that you can do. You can compare the revenue trends from tracked versus scan revenue. By tracked, I mean opt-in installs. Ideally, they should copy each other. They don't have to match one-to-one, but the dynamics will show you that the scaling and the data reporting is done correctly. So you can see two lines. One is the day zero revenue for tracked installs, and the other one is total revenue according to scan. So key takeaways. This is basically a repetition of everything previous presenters mentioned before. IDFA is still a big thing. This could be a game changer in your analysis, so try to put more emphasis on increasing the opt-in rate. Also, Google iOS takes time, patience, and eventually money. Don't rush into conclusions before you've passed the learning phase, and use the right data for measurement. And it's important that there is no single source of truth, and you need to pull the data from all data points you can come up with and build your own custom approach for measurement. Thank you for your attention. I tried to be quick to leave some time for the Q&A. So now I pass the floor to Elena.
Thank you, Vyacheslav, for the great presentation. Yeah, so I'm going to be very short comparing to Vyacheslav because he's today our main dish and I'm like a dessert. Yeah, so I'm going to show you a bit how our Just Scan dashboard looks like. And let me start the video. Yeah, so it's working. Cool. Yeah, so this dashboard actually allows you to get the high value analysis of the data that you can get from Scan about your Scan users and how valuable they are. So based on this information, you basically can optimize your campaigns. Of course, it's not still the same as opt-in users, but anyway, what we can get from Scan, we show you. And with the help of this dashboard, you are able to see which campaigns are driving the most users on iOS. What are your overtime metrics for each campaign, for each channel, I mean, and which channels basically triggered your mapped values. And let's see the first dashboard. The name is Total Scan Installs Report. It shows the combined total installs and reinstalls from a campaign with the breakdown of the number of postbacks, which returned a CV null value because the conversion did not pass Apple's privacy threshold. And it's possible also to see the split between conversion value null as compared to the rest of your events, so like valid conversions. And if you see that there is a really high rate of such conversions, I mean null, or null, it's better to say. So you have then, you should check some things like, for example, that you have set up your conversion values correctly. The second option that maybe your partners are not able to send SCAD networks installs to your MEP. And the last possible reason for that you may not have met Apple's privacy threshold. Next dashboard, we call it Scan User Acquisition Analysis. And it shows the distribution of Scan installs that had a conversion value included in the install postback versus those that did not. You saw it a little bit on the Vyacheslav's slide about Google. But as you can see, it's possible also to have other dimensions, so it's not only by channel, but also app, campaign name, and ad group name. And the last but not least is user quality by channel widget. And it allows you to see your total installs as reported by Scan against the breakdown of the core CVs that you receive from each postback. And this is it from me for today. As I mentioned, it's going to be really short. And if you want to talk more about this or you want to see the dashboard, you can scan the QR code, connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can start from there. Thank you very much.